So today we're going to be looking at the Gospel of Luke. Is probably my favorite chapter in the whole Bible. So we'll be covering Luke chapter 15 today. But I just want to take a little bit of time this morning to do a little Bible study because I'm a preacher at heart, and even though I don't get to preach at chapel today because I'm on the couch recovering, I thought we'd spend a little bit of time today doing a little bit of Bible study. So if you've got a Bible, you're welcome to follow along. And if you don't have a Bible with you, that's okay because I'm going to read it anyway. But it is a chapter of the Bible we call the parables of the lost. And Jesus is going to be talking about three different lost things: a lost sheep, a lost coin, and a lost son. So here we're going to start Luke chapter 15, starting at verse 1. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes with sinners and eats with them." So Jesus told them this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Does he not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me. I have found my lost sheep." I tell you, in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. We're going to pause there. The neat thing about stories in general is that the audience, we have a way when we hear a story of putting ourselves into the shoes of the character. Anybody in here fans of like superhero movies? Like, I read comic books when I was a kid. I loved comic books, superhero stories, like the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. That spoke to my heart, right? I love superheroes, and I always loved picturing myself as a superhero when I was a kid. And that's normal. When we watch a movie or a TV show or read a book, a lot of times we'll put ourselves into the story, and we can envision ourselves as characters. And that's normal. So when we see stories, when we hear stories, when we read stories, it's normal for us to put ourselves into the shoes of the characters. And I think Jesus is doing something intentional here. I think he's trying to keep his audience out of the story because he's talking to the Pharisees and teachers of the law, the people who were the cream of the crop when it comes to religion. And he starts off by talking about shepherds, who were the bottom of the barrel. Because shepherds, they live out in the field, they're smelly, they're dirty, they're not high society. So if you talk to someone who is high society and say, "Hey, imagine yourself as the bottom," they're going to have a hard time doing that. It's hard for us to envision ourselves in a lower status. And a lot of times, we don't want to envision ourselves in a lower status. We don't have any problem picturing ourselves in a higher status, but we don't want to pretend that we are lower status. And that's what Jesus is asking them to do. Imagine yourself in a lower status. Imagine you're this shepherd. And I think that the Pharisees and the teachers of the law would have said, "No, that's not our thing. You want us to pretend what? That we're shepherds? I don't think so." And so the first story that Jesus tells is about lowering themselves to imagine they're a shepherd. And it would be hard for them to do that. But the shepherd is the one who says, "I've lost one sheep, I'm going to go find it." And the point Jesus is driving home is that there is more heavenly rejoicing over a lost person who is found than the 99 who don't need to be found. So it really talks about the heart of God caring for those who have wandered from the fold. But then he goes on. Jesus says in Luke 15, starting at verse 8, "Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins." Now he's asking a group of Middle Eastern men to imagine that they are a woman. And if you know anything about Middle Eastern culture, women don't typically have the highest value in the ancient Middle East. And so to ask a group of high society men to pretend that they're a woman, again, they're going to say, "What are you doing? We're not going to do that. You're asking us to imagine ourselves below our station? No, not going to happen." So Jesus says, "Imagine you're a woman who has 10 silver coins and loses one. Does she not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, 'Rejoice with me. I have found my lost coin.' In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. So it's the same theme. Person who has something precious loses one piece of it and stops everything to go find it. And Jesus is trying to help us understand the heart of God, how important it is for God to keep people in the family, in the fold. But Jesus is telling the story in a way that keeps his audience away. Pretend you're a lowly shepherd. I'm not going to do that. Pretend that you're a poor woman. No, I'm not going to do that. So as the Pharisees and the teachers of the law are listening, they are outside the story looking in. And then Jesus finishes off with this third part of the story. He said there was a man who had 2 sons. Now in the ancient Near East culture, anytime you tell a story about the father, they're going to automatically be able to picture a father as God, like God the Father. This says there was a man who had 2 sons. And the younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So the father divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. Now here's the thing. If you understand inheritances, when do children normally receive an inheritance from their family? For this younger son, if there are 2 sons, the younger son says to his father, "Give me my share of the inheritance now." What is he basically telling his father now? In essence, he's saying, I wish you were dead. I don't need you in my life. Give me what I have coming to me. I want to have nothing to do with you. It really is a slap in the face from this child to his father, which basically is him telling his dad, I have no use for you. I don't want to be part of this family anymore. Give me what I have coming to me, like as same as you were dead. And yes, it's a terrible sentiment, but the father doesn't begrudge him. The father says, okay. So the father splits it up, gives him his portion, and then he goes and he squanders everything. So Luke chapter 15, verse 14. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his field to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. Now, if you know anything about Middle Eastern culture, how do they feel about pigs? Right. Pigs, swine are offensive. Absolutely. So for this young Jewish boy to go hire himself out and be put in a place where he is feeding pigs, he has really hit rock bottom. Not only is he feeding pigs, but he longs for the food that the pigs are eating. It's like, man, I don't even have what the pigs have. So the fact that he is jealous of swine tells us what kind of low estate he is in. He is feeding pigs. He is wanting the food that the pigs are eating. He is hit like rock bottom. In verse 17, when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men, how many of my father's servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out, go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. Now, I want you to get the visual image here. He is at a point where he realizes he has wronged his dad. Right? He has said, I don't care if you're living or dead anymore. Give me my share of the inheritance. I'm out of here. And now he realizes how much he has wronged his dad. So as he is setting back off, the father sees him from a long way off. And because the father can see him from a long way off, we have this image where the father doesn't just like happen to glance up. Because like to see someone at a long way off, you have to be looking, right? To see something on the horizon, you don't see something on the horizon just by chance. And so Jesus gives us this picture, this mental picture here of a father who is actively searching the horizon for his lost son. And when the son is still way off in the distance, the father sees him and goes running to him. Now remember, this is not our modern culture. This is what we call the ancient Near East, the ANE. And in the ancient Near East, men wore long tunics. So for the father to go running, what would he have to do in order to go running to see his son? He's got to hike up his clothes so that his knees can get moving. So it's an embarrassing posture. First of all, to show your legs like that, but then to pull up your cloak and your tunic like that to go running, it is not very graceful and it's not very dignified, is it? Stanley, I know it's still early for you, my friend, but we're glad to have you here at the Sunday morning Bible study. Yes, the father takes a position of what would look like shame and embarrassment to hike up his cloak and his tunic to go running. But he doesn't care, because his son is more important to him than how it looks to outsiders. So while the son was a long way off, the father goes sprinting out to see him. And he throws his arms around him and he hugs him and kisses him. And then the son says this. This is Luke 15, verse 21. The son said, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard the music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. "Your brother has come home," the servant replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him." Now notice what the brother is doing. He is separating himself from his younger brother. He is not even claiming family connections. It's not "when my brother did this." He says, "when this son of yours." So he's telling the father, this is your family. I have nothing to do with this. He's like divorcing himself from his own brother. That's how serious this dude is about the offense. "When this son of yours did this, you go and kill the fattened calf for him." And the father responds, Luke 15, verse 31, "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." And there are a couple really cool things that I think that we can take from this story. The first one is this. We might be the younger son. We might be the one that is lost. And if we have wandered away from God, even if we have said, "I want nothing to do with this anymore. I'm going to go live my own life." If we are the ones that are lost, there is always a place back with the Father. And God is always watching the horizon, waiting for us to turn back and say, "I don't want to do this on my own. Can I come back and be part of the family?" And God always welcomes people into the family. You see, it's the older son that keeps people away. So the first thing, we might be that younger son who is lost, looking for a place back. Or we might be the older son who wants to keep people separated and say, no, this person doesn't belong here. This person has no place here. I do not even recognize this person as family anymore. No, get them out of here. And the question really comes down to, what is the heart of the Father? You see, the heart of the Father welcomes everybody in and doesn't push people away. It is the loyal son who is the one who pushes people away and says, "We don't want them here anymore." So no matter where you are this morning, I think that we can find ourselves in this story. We can recognize that we are ones who have been lost and we need to find our way back. Or we can recognize that we have always been with the family, and sometimes we don't do a good job of being open and accepting of people who are lost. And if we are going to be honest and recognize the heart of the Father and recognize God's position, we've got to understand that God welcomes everybody back. It's really more us who push people away. God says, hey, my arms are open, come running home. And sometimes it's us who are too righteous, too spiritual. We're the ones who say, no, you're not welcome here. Look at how dirty you are. Look how messed up you are. And that is not the way of Christ. And that is not the heart of the Father. So it's not a long chapter. Luke chapter 15, the stories of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son, really helps us understand the heart of God. And my encouragement to you guys today is this. If you feel like you have been lost and that you have been wandering and that you need to come back to your faith, God's arms are always open and you are always welcome. But if you are the kind of person who says, you know what, I've got my act together and I don't want to have anything to do with those other people, you need to recognize that that kind of attitude does not reflect the heart of God, because God welcomes everybody, and so should we. I hope you guys have a blessed weekend. Have a fantastic Sunday. I appreciate you joining me for a Sunday morning Bible study as we have looked at Luke chapter 15. And if there's anything that I can do for you guys this week, you are free. Shoot me a message. Let me know how I can be praying for you and how I can help you guys. And have a great rest of your week. I'll talk to you guys later.